All right, guys. And I have a good friend here on the podcast, Tony Montalbano. And I'm excited about this one, man, because I met Tony at Chris Rude's Mastermind in Destin, Florida in March. And his partner, or two partners, Eric and Shyla Klein, these guys are just absolutely crushing the real estate game. And they've only been doing this for, I think, 18 months or something like that.
Not even.
Not even
Yeah.
18 months. And I'll let
Yeah.
Tony's going to dive into the details on this. But guys, Tony has a successful business background, entrepreneurial background, but now he is helping, drive the ship forward in their real estate company there in Raleigh, North Carolina. And these guys are doing ridiculous numbers, and they're doing it at such a really, really fast rate. And so I think there's gonna be a lot of golden nuggets. We're gonna dive deep in that. But Tony, it's an honor to have you on the podcast, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too, Blake. I appreciate you reaching out and asking. And I was actually stoked. I was so happy to do this podcast. I thought it was last Tuesday. So
Yeah.
I told everybody last Tuesday, I was like, oh man, I got a podcast to do. And then I clicked on the email. I was like, oh, it's next Tuesday.
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to this for a little while, man. So
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for being on, brother. I appreciate it. So let's dive into it, man. I know we got the pleasure to meet and speak. I got to meet you and Shyla. I didn't get to talk to Eric a whole lot because he's a busy guy and he was talking to a lot of guys at the mastermind. But I got to speak with you and Shyla a lot, and I kind of know your background. But go ahead and tell the folks, like, you obviously are a successful entrepreneur, but how did that all start for you? What was your journey?
yeah, I'll get into it. So I was, born and raised in the Midwest, right outside of Chicago, Illinois, in a town called Rockford. Very blue collar, immigrant grandparents, and my dad, truck driver, worked at a factory. Very humble beginnings, but growing up, I was always like, man, if I could just get in the union and work construction, if I could ever make $100,000 a year, that would be everything. I just couldn't even fathom it back then.
Yeah.
And so that was, that's kind of what my mindset was growing up. Everybody who drove new trucks and had a boat and all that stuff, they all were, worked construction. It was just blue collar. So that was kind of where I was heading. Barely graduated high school. I actually was failing like 3 classes my senior year because I just quit going the last couple months. I had to, the first close I ever made was my English teacher, my senior year. I was failing English for a 3rd time just because I wouldn't go to class. And it was the last day of school and I needed this credit to graduate. So I run to her classroom and I'm like, hey, I know I'm failing this class, but this is the last credit I need to get my diploma. And she's like, well, you haven't even been here for a month. And I was like, is there anything I can do? And she's like, nope, you're gonna have to go to summer school. And I was like, well, I got no aspirations of going to college. Nobody in my family cares about education. I'm just going to swing a hammer the rest of my life. Like, you're not teaching me any lesson here. What do I have to do? And she made me sit down and write like a 3-page essay about what I've learned and how I failed and all that. And she ended up passing me. So I was able to graduate high school. But it took some convincing. So that's kind of where I was scholastically. So yeah, after high school, started working construction. I was a residential electrician, actually, just, around Rockford in the suburbs. And then I got myself in some trouble. Ended up getting in a bar fight, which I told this on a couple other podcasts, but I was in a bar fight. Ended up in an altercation with a guy, and he ultimately, after the altercation, passed away a couple weeks ago from the injuries of the fight. So I ended up spending the next, almost 2 years in and out of county jail, facing 1st-degree murder charges. So that was just kind of a wake-up call for me. Like, I was really reckless back then. Like, I was drinking a lot, doing a lot of drugs, just hanging out with the wrong people. And when you're from like kind of a small Midwest town, I mean, it's easy to get wrapped up in that crowd. There's not a lot to do but drink. So that's what we were doing. And then with the drinking comes the drugs and everything else and the fights. So I got charged with 1st-degree murder. It was a self-defense case though. It really was self-defense. I didn't start the fight. So I was found not guilty. And then once I got out of trouble and I was off free trial probation and all that, I just kind of was like, man, I need to make a serious change in my life. Obviously things aren't going the way I want them to. I quit hanging out pretty much with everybody I was hanging out with. I quit doing the things I was doing. I moved from Illinois to San Diego, California on a whim, just like picked a place on the map that was the furthest from where I grew up and had good weather. I didn't know anybody there, had no job prospects, nothing. I just said, I need to get out of here. So me and my dog jumped in my truck and drove out to San Diego, got a place on the beach. And, it was right at the time the housing market, this was 08. So, and all I knew was construction and labor. And there was 0 jobs to be had, but I'm like applying to every single job I can find. And it's funny because when I was interviewing for these positions, they're like, oh, it's great you're from the Midwest. You guys got really good work ethic. So it was like a plus that I was from the Chicago area.
Right.
And I was young, 25, ready to work. So all these interviews would go really well. And then they would do a background check and they would see this rap sheet of arrests, even though I wasn't convicted on any of the serious charges. I did have a battery conviction from a previous incident, which isn't good, misdemeanor. But I just have a history of violence, which a judge has told, multiple judges have told me I have a history of violence on my record. Yeah, I couldn't pass a background check to save my life. So just trying to figure out what I could do. I got on Craigslist and I was like, if I can just get a job, cash doing anything and collect some unemployment. And a guy was just opening a bicycle shop out there on the beach and needed somebody to build beach cruisers, like 10 beach cruisers a day for like $100 or whatever it was. And I was like one of 50 people that applied for it because this was at the crash where like nobody had any jobs. But I was there like an hour early for the interview. I got there before he got there at like 7 a.m. I was waiting for him. I gave him, this spiel about just moved here. I really need to work. I'll work as much as you need me to, whatever it takes. I'll get paid less if it's up to me and another guy. I just need the job. He hired me and we got so busy within the first few weeks, he just hired me full time. And then I worked for him for like a year or two and then ended up opening my own shop over by San Diego State. Got lucky. I had that shop for a year. And then the restaurant right next door wanted to buy my lease out. So they gave me a check to buy my lease out. And then me and the original guy who hired me at the other shop, we went to China and started importing our own brand of bicycles.
Wow.
And then that's when we kind of blew up. So we started direct importing from China. I was driving up and down the coast, West Coast, distributing beach cruisers to all these shops. And then we opened a big retail shop in Pacific Beach in San Diego, which is still there. I still own it, even though I'm in Raleigh now. But
so Tony, first, I mean, there's a lot of golden nuggets there, and before we kind of move forward, I want to kind of go back into your story because you were talking about obviously you had a lot of challenges to start, right? You're in a small town. There's not a lot of opportunity. I can relate. I grew up in a small town in Texas called Freeport, Texas. It's a port town. And everybody in Freeport, you work at Dow Chemical, you work at BASF. It's a chemical plants, or you work in the port and you tie up ships. And there's nothing wrong with that. These guys make $100,000 a year. I mean, they make a great living for their family. But growing up, that was like the pinnacle.
Yeah.
So it's like this is it, man. This is the top of the mountain. And but with that, there's a lot of boredom and you kind of get into trouble. And trust me, I have my laundry list of issues that I could talk about on a whole nother podcast that would probably take weeks to discuss. But in your situation, you got into some challenges. Do you feel like if you didn't have those challenges, would you be who you were today? Do you kind of feel like it was sort of I don't know, maybe a catalyst, or what were some of the, kind of the silver lining, I guess, in those moments?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, people ask that question a lot, obviously, because it's hard to fathom, like, you know, it's hard to fathom like going through a first degree murder trial. Like I was facing life in prison at 22 years old. So for somebody to like kind of put themselves, it's just almost impossible to put yourself in those shoes.
Mm.
But I explain it like to everybody. It's like, I was going through whatever the worst thing that's ever happened in your life, the way you felt at that point, that's how I felt. Like I think all of our worst, might be different, but we feel the same about them. Maybe
Yeah.
somebody's worst thing was, their grandparent died, or they got in a car accident, like whatever it is, but that's as bad as you've ever felt. That's how I felt during my trial.
Yeah.
So I try to explain it like that. Really hard to go through, but there was a point in my trial. It was the day before I was going to take the stand and get cross-examined. And I remember walking into my apartment. At the time I lived alone, but it was after, we're 2 weeks into this trial, and I walked into my place. I was by myself. It was after a long day. I knew I was going to take the stand, and I just like dropped all my stuff right when I walked in the house, and I just like stared in the hallway, and I was just like, just remember, this is the worst you're ever gonna be in
Mhm.
life right now. This is the worst moment of your life. So no matter what happens moving forward, it's never going to be this bad. And I think about that day. I'll get a little emotional about it, but I think about that day all the time. When I'm having a bad day, I think about that moment, and it makes all the other stuff seem insignificant. So,
Wow.
to answer your question, yeah, for sure. I mean, if it wasn't for that really hard time in my life, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't appreciate the things I appreciate. I don't think I would be nearly as motivated as I am, because I just, with anybody who hits rock bottom, like you just never want to go back. So,
Yeah.
so that's what, kind of fuels me to keep moving forward. And it was the same thing. Like I've led a really good life out in California the last 14 years. Like I didn't have to start a new business. It's just like I was getting kind of bored with that business. I was living a good life, making a good living, doing whatever I wanted, traveling when I wanted, working very little. That shop's on autopilot. But at the same time, it's like, hey man, I want to keep moving forward and keep seeing where I can take this. Like, what's the next level now?
Right.
And I think my past definitely, is what influences that mindset for sure.
I love it, Tony. And I feel like meeting a lot of entrepreneurs, and not just entrepreneurs, but people that are, they're doing their best to live some sort of life of significance, whatever that means for them. Man, the common thread is they just went through a bunch of shit. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like it's so weird, but every time I talk to someone that is like that has this insatiable hunger to what's, where can I grow, how can I get better, what's the next thing, I feel like the common thread is, dude, they went through some sort of serious crises and they hit rock bottom. And it's like, because I've hit rock bottom myself in life, and when you hit that place, dude, I felt like that, dude. Different scenario, but the same, like you said, great way to put it, same feeling where you're like, dude, this is the worst it will freaking get, dude. This is the
Yeah.
darkest day, and it's like a springboard. It kind of like
Yeah.
springs you off into your life. And I feel like I've never, for me, that year for me was 2013. That was probably the worst. That was literally the worst year of my life. I call it. I had a few years. I call it the famine years. Kind of like, in the Bible they had famines. I feel like that
Yeah.
was like, dude, 2012 to 2016, worst fucking years of my life. Pure hell. But you get through it better and motivated. And it's hard for people outside looking in to understand that. They're like, they're never going to be able to kind of be in your shoes. But it's like that driving factor, man. So I love, that you took that challenge and you transformed it into, like, really, it's really a place of power now,
Yeah,
place of
for sure.
power, which
And
is really
it's
cool.
and it's funny, Blake, like I didn't talk about my past for a long time. Like there was friends I had in San Diego that I knew for a decade before they even knew my troubled past. And I don't know, I was a little bit of shame, and just I felt like such a different person after all that than I did before it. So
Yeah.
it's like, when people meet me now and they realize I went through that, it's like, you got to realize I was like such a different person. I was such a
Yeah.
dirtbag. I was just hanging out with horrible people, doing horrible things. I was very selfish. Like, it was one incident that led to, me going to jail and going through trial, but it was really a series of things leading up to that. It was just a lifestyle I was living. And like, when I look back at it now, I really feel like my life started in San Diego. I almost never think about my life before that because I just was a different person. I feel like a completely different person now.
Yeah.
And the more I speak about my past, the more people reach out to me and they can relate in some way, or they're just like, they appreciate that my honesty. So in the last, 5 years or so, I've been a lot more open about it just because of the feedback I get from it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I mean, and this is, the podcast it's called the Underdogs Edge because I feel like a lot of people that I interview, dude, they were underdogs. I mean, and if you're born in a small town where the pinnacle of success is being a blue collar laborer, nothing wrong with that, but that's the absolute pinnacle. Plus you have lowly friends and you're doing, I mean, dude, the deck is stacked against you, man. I mean, it's completely stacked against you, and especially to have what happened and for you to overcome that, dude, most people are statistics, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think that's really, really powerful, man. So I love it. I love to hear your story because it's inspiring, and I can relate because that's how I feel, dude. I look back and I'm like, I don't even know who that guy was. I mean, when I say a different person, dude,
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy,
Yeah.
but it's really, really cool. So let's get back to you're doing the bike shop in San Diego. You and the guy who hired you, you guys are now basically like partners, I
Yeah,
guess.
50-50 partners. We still are.
Okay.
So yeah, we started direct importing and then opened a big retail shop that sits there today. Had our ups and downs in business, one downfall I would say is kind of when at one time we had 3 bike shops, between Big Bear, we had one right on the beach that was a rental shop, and then our main shop in Pacific Beach. And when all like the bird scooters and all that stuff showed up a few years back, 4 years ago, whatever it was, like we just like our rental fleet got cut to zero. Nobody was renting bikes. We were renting 100 bikes a day, and then the scooters show up on the streets and we were renting no bikes a day. So that was kind of our first, like, our trajectory kept going up until that year. And that was kind of what triggered me into like, okay, I need to start figuring something out, because it's not really a house of cards, but you never know what's going to happen. You got to diversify a little bit.
Hmm.
And kind of right around that time, I had called Eric Klein, my partner, and we've been friends since back in the troubled era. He
Yeah.
was he was one of those bad influences. We were bad influences on each other, to be honest.
It's
But
funny.
but yeah, we were living together back then, actually. And he had started a very successful business out in Florida. We kind of had a falling out after my trial, and we just needed a break from each other. We were kind of crazy back then, and we didn't talk for probably 6 years or something. He went to Florida to kick a drug habit. I went to California to clean my act up. And then a few years later, he was out in San Diego, and we ended up meeting up and just hit it off like we talked yesterday. So
Awesome.
so anyway, to get back to it, during that time when the bike shop was struggling a little bit, I had reached out to Eric. He had a very successful business out in Florida. He was getting people out of timeshares, had 150 employees, doing really well. And I just told him, I'm like, hey man, I'd like to figure something else out. I could move anywhere if well, let's pitch ideas to each other. And we had ideas of opening barber shops and petting zoos, and that's a joke, but anything and everything,
If it makes money,
if it
yeah.
makes money. Like, can we import stuff from China and wholesale it?
Yeah.
That was one thing I was trying to work on. And we just got pitching each other ideas. And then he went through a lawsuit with his company a year later or so, and then he had kind of a downfall. And then so for the next year and a half or whatever, we're kind of pitching each other, and he heard about this wholesaling business. So he bought a bunch of leads and started just calling leads and trying to close deals. And once he kind of figured the model out, he said, "Hey man, let's open an office and get this thing rolling." And I just packed up and moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, and opened an office with him and his wife Shyla, our other business partner, who really is kind of everything for our business. She's
Yeah.
she's the admin, she's the boss, she keeps us under control. And yeah, we started May of last year was my first day in the office. I think was like May 3rd or something. And I was just trying to wrap my head around this thing. Eric had been on the phones for a couple months, and he had locked some deals up. He was having another company dispo him. And I get into the office, I listen to Eric pitch for 2 days, and I was like, all right, I'm going to jump on the phones on day 3. So I, opened the CRM, clicked on the first lead, had my script right there. Very first call I made, I closed that deal.
Dang.
And it actually funded and everything. I think we made $9,000 on it. It was a property in Memphis.
Dang, that's
But literally the first call I made on the phones, I closed. And I really attribute that to, obviously there's a little luck involved, and just listening to Eric, pitch for 2 days. He's a monster on the phones.
Mhm.
So that was really helpful. But the night before I jumped on the phones, which I do this pretty much every night, is just I kind of envision my day tomorrow. And I just sat in silence, and I was just kind of going through, meditating and going through the calls in my head, and just like really getting like in a really calm place the night before, and knowing, like, right when I went to bed, I was like, all right, I know I'm ready and I'm going to close the deal tomorrow. Like there was
Wow.
no doubt in my mind at all. I woke up in the morning, I felt the same way. And once I got to the office and jumped on the phones, I just like had the confidence. I knew I was going to close the deal. And it was just that, preparation, the mindset, the meditation, and envisioning it. And I do that, pretty much every night. Not every single night, but I try to do that every night. Like, what's my day going to be like tomorrow? What am I going to accomplish? And I truly believe, like, every night, like, okay, I'm going to get this done tomorrow. And more times than not, it does happen. So
Wow.
it's
Is
just,
that something that you because that's I mean, people visualize every now and then. They'll try to set their goals every now and then, but to do that pretty consistently, was that something that you learned? Did someone kind of how did you develop that habit? Because that's a huge mental advantage to be able to do that.
yeah. So I suffer from severe anxiety. Like ever since I was younger, I've had really bad anxiety. And it's almost, it used to be impossible for me to get to sleep. And I kind of learned through, I have a mentor, actually my old football coach, Coach Pokey, who I still talk to on every 4 weeks or so. Just through a lot of, counseling and just figuring things out myself, I realized, I can calm my mind down if I focus on one thing every night. And
Yeah.
it's enough to get me to go to sleep and stay asleep. So when I'm alone at night in silence, like I haven't watched television in 15 years, like I can't have like all these distractions going on because my mind will race and I'll get really bad anxiety.
Mhm.
So I just need to focus on one thing. So it was really just self-preservation of like, I need to get to sleep. How do I get to sleep? I need to focus on one thing. And I've learned that just focusing on that one thing every night calms my mind and gives me confidence and helps me relax. So
Wow.
it was nothing that was really taught to me specifically, but I'll give a little credit to my coach, Coach Pokey, who had kind of put that in my ear, like, you know, either write one thing down and repeat it. You got to focus on one thing instead of a million things going on in your head. And
Wow.
that's what I started doing years ago. And it's really helped me with my anxiety. It's helped me with my sleep. It's helped me in business, in relationships, and everything, because I'm focusing on one thing every night. And if it's an important thing that I'm doing tomorrow, you're like putting in this little bit of work every night,
Yeah.
in preparation. So that's how it happened for me.
That's huge, man. I mean, and once again, taking a challenge, turning it into a strength. Because,
Hmm.
dude, to be able to do that every night. I mean, if you, I have similar issues myself, and just getting on. I flew to, I went to Seattle this past weekend, and then flying back to Seattle to Houston, the freaking seats are like super tiny. And dude, I don't like closed spaces, and I have elevator issues. It's weird, man. So like, there's all kind of stuff. So, dude, like literally, I was like, okay, I got 4.5 hours, and dude, I just created like an itinerary for myself. Okay, first hour, I'm gonna do this. Second hour, I'm
Hmm.
gonna do this. Third, and if I broke it, and I broke it down, and dude, I got through the plane ride. But if I just sit there idle, dude, I'm like, I'm about to freaking jump off the plane, bro. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. It's funny. And then when I look at my past, it's like, yeah, idle hands are the devil's playground. And when I didn't have anything positive to do with that idle time, I was getting into trouble. So it's like you
yeah,
just turn all those things into positive things, and you'll start doing positive
yeah,
things. So
yeah,
yeah, and when I was younger, they tried putting me on all this medication for it. And I'd take the medication for 2 weeks, and it would just like dumb me down so much. I would hate it and get off of it.
yep,
And I just made a decision at like 15 years old. I was like, I never want to take any pills. Like, I'll figure out the tools within me. And
right,
I don't need medication to get through this. I'll figure out how to live with this, anxiety disorder. And it basically was, going to the gym every single day, being very disciplined with everything I do in life. And that has helped me tremendously, get over any anxiety I had, because
yeah,
it's like
no,
you can't have a panic attack when you're running from a bear. Like
no,
you're
yeah,
having a panic attack when you're like sitting in silence and your
yep,
thoughts are creeping in. So it's like, as long as you're staying active, and that's why I can't watch TV or do anything idle or sit at the beach and relax, because my mind doesn't work that way. I need to
yeah.
be doing something.
Absolutely, man. I love it. And I'm very similar, bro. And I feel like that's also a key trait for success. I mean, what
Mhm.
some people may perceive as a negative, really, it sort of kind of forces you to be a certain way that helps you become more successful. So I think it's awesome, man. So now it's less than, so I guess next week will be a year anniversary that you guys are doing the real estate company together.
Yep.
Let's dive into that, man, because I know for sure, because being around you guys a little bit, and then being in some of the same social groups, you guys are putting up insane numbers. You have a wholesaling operation in Raleigh, North Carolina, but you're in different markets. You guys are doing, I mean, you're doing numbers that some people don't do. It takes 4 to 5, 6, 7, 8 years to get to. Some people actually will never, most people will never be able to fathom these numbers. Kind of give us a lowdown on what you guys are doing revenue wise per month, your team structure, but then maybe not the secret sauce, but kind of the overview of what helps y'all become so successful in what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, we were fortunate enough to jump into this business having, entrepreneurial and business backgrounds where we owned other businesses. So we weren't scared of spending money on marketing and
Right.
whatnot. And we had a little bit of capital too. So we kind of overspent in the beginning, with cold callers and leads and just every system we could get, every CRM, anything we could do to kind of take the elevator, not the stairs, was our approach. So
Mm-hmm.
that helped. Hiring right really helped. So there's three of us partners. Eric handles acquisitions. He's got 3 closers underneath him. I handle dispositions. I have 2 disposition managers underneath me, and then Shyla handles admin stuff and transaction coordination, and she's got 1 person under her. So we have the business broke down into 3 departments, which I always say really helped, because Now, like after I closed that first deal, I basically just turned around and said, all right, how do I get rid of these deals? Like we're paying 35% to another company to dispo our deals. That's not going to work. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a need for dispositions. I need to figure out how to sell deals. So the next, that was in May. I'm just looking at my sheet here because I had wrote some stuff down. So June 9th was the first time I dispoed a deal, and we made $45,000 on that assignment fee.
Yeah.
So that was the first deal I dispoed. And then we went to an all-in event in July, and then talked to a few people there. They were using this platform called Investor Lift to dispo deals. So we ended up getting Investor Lift in August, I believe. August, we did 77 grand in assignment fees. And then September, we did 121,000 in assignment fees.
Wow.
And then we got cartel mode in September. So I had put together this cool listing in Tennessee, and some of the cartel bosses were posting it on the Facebook community group, like, man, this listing is awesome. We hired like a really good photographer that like did stuff for movies and stuff, and he had like aerial footage and Matterport and video walkthrough. It was this really cool property. We just wanted to market it really well, so we spent like $300 on photography for it. And the cartel bosses on Investor Lift reposted it on the Facebook page. So Robert Wensley, who owns Investor Lift, gave me a call that when he saw it, and he's like, man, he's like, what kind of numbers you guys doing? I told him. He's like, man, that's insane for you guys only doing this a couple of months. He's like, if I give you access to 3 million buyers, what do you think you could do? And I was like, sky's the limit, let's roll.
Yeah.
So he gave me cartel mode, I think the end of September. And then in October, we did 434,000 in assignment fee. And that's, dispo is an important part of it, having a dispo process, obviously. I was getting so many deals from Eric and his team because, he's a monster on the phones, and they were locking up so many deals, and I was by myself at the time. I was using Investor Lift as like one of my employees and finding buyers through it. So the learning curve, went really fast for me because I'm like, I got 20 deals coming in. I got to figure out how to sell 20 deals by myself. So I had to come up with a process like right away of like, all right, this is what I do when a deal comes in. This is how I market it. And then this is how I deal with buyers. This is how I find hedge funds, all that stuff. So, and we were jumping into a new market every month. So Investor Lift was like, I really needed it, at the time. So October, we did 434. And then November, we did 332,000 in assignment fees. December, we did 221. And then January, we did 430. So that's kind of how we progressed. And then February, we did 435. And then March, we did 285. So we've consistently, we were hoping to hit, 500 in 1 month by now, but we haven't yet. But we're over 300 for this month already. And we're still looking for that $500,000 month.
I mean, but right now you guys are basically, I mean, I was kind of running the numbers while you said it. I mean, you're a $4.5 million company right now per year.
Yeah. So I think we've closed like 2.4 million so far.
Yeah.
But yeah, this year, this calendar year, January to December. Yeah, we're hoping. I mean, we're hoping to do $5 million is our plan.
Dude,
that's our goal.
That's strong. That's super strong, man. And I think because this is my 5th year in real estate, and I've kind of tried to model myself, with some of the successful companies, and you guys are going to do 5 million this year, but your team size is not like through the roof. I mean, it's you got Eric, and you got 3 guys, so it's 4, you and then 2, so that's so was it like 5, 6 people, like something like that, 5, 6 people. So it's like,
and then, we got Shyla and the transaction team, which helps. I mean, without them, we wouldn't be where we are.
110%.
But yeah, it's our kind of our one of our core values is efficiency, and that was something we came up with before we started building the team. And with efficiency, I mean, you need processes, and Eric has a killer sales process,
Yep.
and I have a killer dispo process.
Yep.
Shyla has a killer transactional coordination process that she does. So if we just stick to our process and stay consistent, we're getting the results. So
Absolutely.
you just got to trust it. You know, there was a few months ago, it was just me and my dispo manager, Michelle, on dispositions, and we hired Kathy. And once we brought a third one on, I totally screwed up our process. And that was our December, when we had kind of a drop off, and I just screwed up our process. It was my fault. I said, all right, we got a third person on here. Let's have her do these things, and then we'll handle the buyers. Like, we were having Kathy create the listings, and then we were sending them out and dealing with the buyers. But then we noticed we didn't know the properties as well, because we weren't the ones creating the listings to send out.
Wow.
And then a couple weeks go by, and we're just not, our process was totally screwed up. And me and Michelle were talking, I'm like, I just screwed everything up. Let's go back to our process, and everybody does the same process, all three of us. And once we did that and just trusted it again, our numbers went back up. So it just goes to show, like, you just need a good process, and you need to stick to it and trust it, and the numbers will be consistent every month.
I love it, man. That's huge, Tony, because I'm looking at December, you guys did 221, which, if that's a drop off, dude, give me that month every month.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in January you doubled it at 430. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, and it's crazy because people are always small process, and I think a lot of times it's people are like, oh yeah, whatever process. But man, it's so powerful, like you just said, because I feel like one of the biggest challenges in this business is things get complex. You know, there's a lot of different freaking variables, man, especially on dispo, because I handle dispo for our team, and I can understand, and right now I have I think 10 or 11 deals I have to move, right? And each deal has its own puzzle pieces that you have to put together. Buyers, showings, sellers, title companies, this and that. There's kind of, there's squatters sometimes. I mean, there's all kind of weird stuff going on. But I think having a process, to me, and you can kind of elaborate on it, I feel like it kind of like dumbs things down in a good way. It simplifies it to where it's like, okay, this is not that hard. All I got to do is run down this track, and we're going to get to the end goal, and versus trying to create a new track every single time.
Yeah. And if it's down on, if it's written down, a process is written down, and you stick to it. Like, for me, if we go through our entire dispo process, like, I'm so confident in it that if a deal doesn't get sold at the end of our process, at the end of the 3-week process, then I know it wasn't a good deal. Like, it wasn't going to get sold. Like, I have the confidence in that. So I'm not stressed out about it. Like,
right.
in the beginning, I was like, man, how am I going to sell these deals? And then one would fall off, and I'd feel all this guilt, like, oh, it was my fault. But now that we have the process, and it's a proven process, yeah, you're right. Like, it's not that personnel isn't a factor, but you can kind of plug anybody in that seat to at least do the process. It does take a certain personality, I believe, on sales and dispo. It takes a certain person on a dispo side. Like, when I hired Michelle, she came in here, she's feisty. She's got a little bit of an attitude. She yells at me all the time, which I said this morning, I'm like, Michelle, you yell at me all the time. But I really feel like it takes kind of that strong attitude or strong personality to kind of deal with buyers and negotiation, and not get beat up, and have a little bit of an attitude like, hey, I got the gold and you need it. So I do think that's important. But at the same time, if you have a process and go through that process every time, it's just kind of plug and play. Like, hire well, put somebody in that seat, and then give them the process and groom them into being a good disposition manager. It takes all the training stuff.
No, that's gold, Tony. And another thing you said, because I can relate to, I think it's huge for someone listeners who may be in this business, is like you said, sometimes you would feel guilt for not selling a deal. And I've felt guilt. My acquisition guys, I mean, in this business, if you don't have clear objectivity, then you can kind of like sometimes you feel too responsible, and you know what I mean? But if sometimes it's just not a deal, you know what I mean? It's just not a freaking deal, man. I mean, if it's
Yeah,
out in the middle of freaking, Alaska, it's a
exactly.
2-1, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's just not a deal.
yeah.
Or the numbers are off, if there's something weird, but having your process is sort of kind of like you're vetting out. It's like you have a property, you put it into the funnel, and then the further it goes down the funnel, if it keeps going, there might be some issues,
Right.
you
There's an
know,
issue. Yeah. Either
you
we
know,
locked it up too high or it's just a bad area where there's not enough investors.
right.
There's a million reasons things get canceled. A big thing that we dealt with just a few weeks ago, man, we had like 5 properties where the sellers were trying to back out, had different offers, lost a
Yeah.
job, had a bad tenant they didn't want to deal with getting out of there. I mean, there's a million reasons these things, fall off by the wayside. But, and I was saying this earlier about, our success and and just having like, a lead, like us 3 partners deal with just our department. It's like Eric can just focus on locking up deals. He doesn't got to think about that deal again once it's done. Once he
Right.
has the contract signed, he's hands off. And then, then we get it in dispositions. And it's like, all we have to worry about is selling this deal. Once that assignment contract gets signed, I don't got to think about that deal ever again. And now it's Shyla's, not problem, but it's
Yeah.
Shyla's responsibility.
Yeah.
And now she's got to see this to the end. Sometimes it's a problem
Yeah.
because the sellers can be, and Shyla deals with that more than anybody with the
Yeah.
sellers. But yeah, it's just like, I just got to focus on this job. I don't got to worry about if Eric's going to lock up a deal or what's going to happen with this deal after we assign it. So just focusing on that specific job has really helped us too.
That's powerful, man. It's like a divide and conquer mentality, and
Hmm.
I think it's another big challenge that a lot of people have in our industry is they're wearing too many hats, man. Trying to do too many things. They're locking up deals, they're selling deals, or the transaction coordinator. I think to me, and I'm also a part of Investor Lift as well with the cartel group with you guys, and I joined the cartel because I wanted to kind of expand my mindset because I sort of was stuck in the do it all mentality, and I was a glorified, door knocker,
Hmm.
6-figure door knocker, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's like, dude, this is not scalable, but
Right.
I feel like the way our industry is going, it's sort of turning into like just a bunch of small or big teams. Like it's just teams now.
Hmm.
We're kind of getting away from the one-off guy, and it's people are starting to form teams. As far as the people that are having big success, I feel like you have to do that.
You have to. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I know guys that are a one-man band and it's like, they're locking up a deal and now all they're worried about is selling this deal and then dealing with title, dealing with buyers and then title companies and escrow and all that stuff. And it's like, well, while you're dealing with all that, what's happening to your deal flow, your lead flow,
It's stopping.
it stops. And now you're, 2 weeks behind on locking another deal up. So yeah, we were fortunate enough to kind of all have our own roles, but it would have been really tough doing this as a one-man band. I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. And real quick before I kind of go into what you guys are doing with because you guys have killer training systems. Eric has an awesome training system with acquisitions. You have an awesome training system for dispositions. But before I get into that, what's y'all's overall vision? Do you guys have kind of a collective vision of like, hey, this is where we want this company to be. We want to be at this amount of revenue, or is it still sort of in the works?
It's a little bit in the works. I mean, our ultimate goal is to, kind of keep building and scaling and get to a certain number where we can ultimately sell the business. Like that's kind of our
Love it.
plan.
Love it.
So, I don't know if that's a 5-year plan or what, but there is kind of a finite number we have to get to, in order to start that conversation. So we're still, kind of in the building stages. We're hiring a few more closers. We're hiring more dispositions. We're hiring more transactions people, and we want to, get, over that 5 million mark a year in order to, make it appealing to a company to ultimately sell the company, the wholesale company.
Mhm.
In the meantime, we're acquiring properties. We have, I think 9 rental properties right now.
Nice.
We have, most of them are on subject to owner financing. We just took down our first deal in Georgia, in Blue Ridge, Georgia, where we're doing a big flip up there on a cabin in the mountains that we're going to be Airbnb-ing. So that's a project we're currently working on. It's a huge rehab. But yeah, we're trying to acquire and be smart about what we're taking on for our portfolio, and we're just going to continue building that, do short-term and long-term rentals, and then, build our wholesale business ultimately to sell it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's exciting. I mean, having an exit plan, I think is super, super important, or at least some sort of in vision or in target. Let's get into your training, because this is exciting. I think people do a lot of training, people do a lot of training. There's a lot of stuff out there, but you guys have, it seems like it's really built around process. It's built on systems. It's built on something that someone can actually take and start implementing right away. Give me a little bit of an overview. I want to say your training is coming up soon, but I don't want to misspeak. So give me like an idea of your disposition training. What does that look like? And when are you guys starting that?
Yeah, so I've done a couple disposition trainings already. Well, basically, we did a 6-week sales training that was 2 hours twice a week for 6 weeks.
Wow.
So it was way too much. So Eric did 4 weeks or 5 weeks. I did 1 week or something like that for dispo. So that was just kind of working the kinks out, trying to figure out how this was going to work. And then after that, Eric, we decided to kind of split them up. So Eric does a 6-week sales training. It's once a week for a couple hours. He goes through his entire sales process, soup to nuts. And I do the same on dispo. The dispo training is a 3-week program, and it's once a week. I say it's an hour, but it always goes 2 hours every week, because we do question Q&A at the end of it and everything. So the disposition training starts tomorrow, actually, the new class. So
Nice.
I think there's 20 something people on this one. I like, I want to keep these kind of small, so we obviously market the training, but like once we hit 20 people, like I kind of want to keep it around that, just so I can focus on everybody's needs. Because I've done disposition training with 90 people on a Zoom, and it was like 3 hours long, and I couldn't even get to half the questions.
Right.
And so I just wanted to keep this a little more intimate. So my next dispo training starts tomorrow, which is the 27th of April. It'll go for a couple hours, and we go basically, the first week is mindset and creating a listing. The second week is finding buyers, building a buyer's list, hedge funds, all that. Third week, I'd have to look at the schedule. I can't really remember, but I think third week is actually more focused on hedge funds, and then the second week is more just building a cash buyers list and finding your real cash buyers and vetting them and stuff. So we basically go from getting pictures done, and I share all the templates we send to sellers, and all of our contracts, all the scripts I've come up with for everything that we do through our process. And we just, like you said, there's a ton of training out there, and we noticed when we jumped into this, there's a lot of training that just kind of does like an overview of what to do, but there wasn't really like specific process training. And like when I would ask anybody about disposition, when I was like trying to figure it out, they would all just kind of give you the overview, like, oh, you got to put a listing together, you got to find cash buyers, and you got to do this and that. And it's like, well, how do you do those things? Like, what's the step-by-step process? Like, I don't know how to do that. So yeah, I think, I've gotten, definitely on sales as well, on the sales training, but and especially on dispo, for me, like the feedback I get on it is just like, there's such a need for disposition training, because it's not really offered that much. Like there, the sales is always sexier in this business, and people don't talk about transactions in dispo, but you know, you can leave a lot of money on the table if you don't have a good disposition process. Like Michelle in my office today, she just knows our buyers so well that, you know, we had ran comps on this property and we were going to send it out and maybe make 20 grand on it. We thought that was the top. And she like looked at the deal and kind of ran her own comps, and she's looking at it. She's like, I think this buyer will pay 10 grand more. Sent it to him for 10 grand more first and said, hey, I'm not sending this one out until you look at it first. And he paid the asking price for it. So we ended up making 30 grand on that deal instead of 20. Just because, you know, because of our process and knowing our buyers, knowing what they've paid in the past. So there's a ton of money to be made on the disposition side, ton of money.
That's huge.
Just going through the process and not having things fall off, you know?
Yeah, I think that's huge, Tony, because I totally agree. I think on dispo, that's where money gets left on the table. And I know I'm guilty of it. And sometimes I'm able to squeeze it out. Sometimes later on, I'm like, damn, we could have made an extra 15 there, you know? But having that process kind of sort of kind of safeguards you from leaving money on the table, you know, it forces you to go through that process. So what I'm going to do is, I know if you're cool with it, I'm going to post this and I'll have like a link to the disposition. So if someone wants to hop on last minute, they can. I know it's sort of an intimate setting, so you know, you want to keep it limited. But Tony, this was awesome, man. I mean, seriously, like, just, you guys are absolutely freaking crushing it. And I messaged Eric and I'd like to get him on and maybe get you guys on together, and we can, to be honest with you, just my brief interaction with you guys, we could probably do 30 different podcasts about 30 different things.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking the same thing when you originally said, oh, it's like 45 minutes. I'm like, dude, we could talk for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Probably.
You know what I mean? But this was really, really fun, man. So I appreciate you being on, and I'm hoping to connect with you guys even more, and you know, just excited to see y'all's growth, man, y'all's business.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I feel the same way, man. Meeting you down in Florida was great, you know, and yeah, I appreciate you reaching out. This was fun. And anybody that wants to reach out to me too, my Instagram's Tony_Mont, M-O-N-T. And you know, I super busy, but when people ask me a question, shoot me a DM. I always get back to them. Might not be that day, it might be the next day, but I mean, like, I really feel like my purpose is to serve, and helping people, it just brings me so much joy. So when I can help anybody, you know, that's really what I enjoy. So don't, you know, anybody out there that has any questions, don't be shy. Ask me anything you want, and I'll appreciate it as much as you.
Awesome, Tony. And the best way for people to reach you is through IG. Is your IG?
Yeah, I think
page?
that's the best. Yeah, Tony_Mont is the best.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome, Tony. Well, hey, man, it was a pleasure, brother. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week, man, and looking forward to connecting soon.
Thanks, Blake. I appreciate it.
Okay, man. Bye.
All right, buddy.